Derek.
Hey,
Oh
Andrew.
my God, that intro still just it gets me. Thank you, Pete. Pete was supposed to be our guest, but it through scheduling it didn't work out. We are this is welcome to Tour Buds Live. This is a show. This is a live broadcast. It's a version of our show that's coming out next year, which is a bit different. It's an actual. It's a bit like a television show where we interview bands and have a good old time. I am your host, Andy. And I'm with my best friend and tour bud, Derek G. Hi, Derek.
Hello, everybody. So this is a fun show we do. This is, the whole purpose is to help up and coming artists, interview established artists, kind of just get the ball rolling, answer questions to people who need the help and want to listen to us who know some stuff. And hopefully most of our guests know a lot. What have you been up
Yes.
to, Andy?
Well, first things first, we have a special guest today, Michael Reisinger from Sinai freaking Beach.
Let's go.
So heavy. They were fucking insane. And I am so happy that he's gonna be on with us in a little bit. And he has a podcast. He's gonna tell us about that eventually. I'm sure he has some juicy tour stories. I think it's gonna be a little wild. I really do. Are you excited, Derek?
I'm super excited. This is this is my timeline of hardcore and metal and metalcore and all that fun stuff. So this is a good bring back to the younger days, and looking forward
Yeah.
to hear what his stories are from the left coast.
Yeah, and I actually got to meet him randomly. It turns out, well, I'll just tell you the story real quick. I was in Kansas City last week, whatever, 2 weeks ago maybe,
Baller.
and for work, and it turns out he actually just ran into me, and it turns out because I had to talk. Long story short, I told my it was like a new hires retreat. And this story is extremely boring, and I apologize, but it serves a purpose. I told my company that I used to tour, blah blah blah, because there's nothing else like that like interesting about me. So I was like, yeah. So I used to do this. I used to play music, and then I think Michael, heard me, and then he was like, oh, that's cool. I used to tour, so he looked me up. He came up to me the next day. He's like, yo, Andy, I looked you up, and you were in a band that I toured with. Like, were you in that band? It was Love for Enemies. Were you in the band at that time? I was like, no. I mean, it is funny because you can tour with people and not really know them. I've done that
Yeah,
before.
for
It's
sure.
kind of weird, but no, it was another drummer. But it turns out we were actually on the same record label, different times. And he was like, "Oh, I play guitar for Sinai Beach," and that just blew my mind. I'm like, what a small world. Now we're in the same company, and I mean, my company is massive. He's in Kansas City, I'm in New York City, but it's just such a random thing how life works. And then I just instantly kind of had the thought, this would be a great platform to hear his story.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. I'm looking forward to it. It's fun to meet people who've done something that not a lot of people get to do, right? You get interesting
Yeah.
stories, interesting perspectives, and we'll see what his side is.
Before we bring Michael on, I would love to hear about your week because I know you got to meet some special people.
Yeah, so I've been traveling a lot. Last week, or 2 weeks ago, I was in Italy for a week with my family. Amazing time. Got back 2 days later, went to Puerto Rico for a charity event and got to meet some cool childhood hero athletes. Johnny Damon. I actually got to meet 50 Cent, which was a cool one.
That's sick.
There's a
That's
ton of
sick.
guys there. Pudge Rodriguez, Jorge Posada.
Did you talk intimately with any of these people?
I
Like,
talked to Johnny Damon for a while.
you
Super,
became
super nice
friends?
guy. I think we became friends enough. I got a fist bump the next day on without me going for it. So
Did you
I'll take
guys?
that.
Did you get
I'll take
anyone's?
that as we're best buds now.
Did you get anyone's number?
No numbers. I
You'd
got
be
an
like,
autograph. That's it.
that's so cute. That's
But
so cute.
back in the saddle and happy to be back doing the show. And yeah, now we're here. So what do you say? You want to bring him in?
Yeah, well, everybody, Michael Ring, Michael Reisinger. You messed me up, dude. Michael Reisinger, dude.
What is
Let me tell
up,
you, Michael, dude,
you crazy dudes?
your your background is so professional.
Oh man, hey, thanks.
Look at your setup. Your setup is so pro.
I appreciate that, man. Yeah, I guess it's kind of funny because like I took a lot from the band days and into this podcast, and I know at some point we'll talk about that, but like, if you look up my podcast and all my guests that I have from Kansas City, like everybody gets an album cover. And I keep all the synthwave sort of color scheme and branding in because I'm an 80s kid and I love that stuff. And for today, what I did was I took down the KCBC TV thing and I put up the sort of the thing I made. Actually, it's dated 2008, which was 3 years after I left the band. And I'll tell my story a bit of like when I left, but like I basically got to watch our video on Headbangers Ball a month after I was out of the band. I got to go to Best Buy and see the end cap, like with my picture and all the guys after I was out of the band. Like, and so it's very bizarre. So what I did was I made that. I was going through an identity crisis, as most young wannabe rock stars hope to be rock stars are one day. And I was like, I really should, like, I went through all my stuff and like bought this shadow box, I think at Hobby Lobby in California, and then like just put all this stuff together. But like there's
Love it.
the Step the Fuck Up tour that we did with Throwdown. That backstage pass or tour pass is back there. A picture of us in Puerto Rico. I have the Puerto Rican flag in the garage that I wore as
Yes.
a cape.
Are you
and
Puerto Rican?
I'm not. We toured there
Okay.
though. We
I
went
love
there,
it.
and what I did was I bought a Puerto Rican flag. And Tim Mason from NIV, right? He told me that when they went out there, he said, "Dude," he goes, "get a Puerto Rican flag at a gift shop." He said, "Put it over your full stack when you play. They'll love it." And I was like, "I'm gonna do it better." And I took a zip tie, and this video's still out there. It's El Kofi, Sinai Beach, live in Puerto Rico. I think we're playing Candace or something, and I'm wearing the Puerto Rican flag as a cape. And the next morning, we stayed with the promoter. Like, I know you guys are used to doing that, right? Like, you stay wherever whatever floor people open up for you, after the mass spaghetti or church's chicken or the other garbage that they put through you.
Yep.
You stay where you can. And we woke up, and that was when message boards were a thing, right? I mean, obviously I'm dating myself. This is like 2004, right? We're in Puerto Rico, and they said, "Hey, you need to go to the Sinai Beach show tonight because you'll get to see the Puerto Rican Superman." And I was like,
That's you.
I was like, oh my gosh. But again, like that show was hilarious because like Puerto Rican time is 4 hours after the show actually says they're going to start. So we started at like 12:30 a.m. And I think I was wearing like an 18 Vision shirt or something after the show. I remember wringing it out and then I just threw it away. It's like, oh my gosh. But anyway, I'm already starting to like jump the shark here. I'm so glad to be on the show, dudes. Like the whole way having and the one little slight adjustment, Andy. I don't know if you heard this because you're in the middle of the room and it was probably chaotic, but like as you were talking, our CEO started looking at me. He turned and he was like, "Are you hearing this? Like, are you hearing this shit right now? Like what Andy's saying?" Because they
That's
all
right.
know, like,
You're
I
right.
was in a band and I got a podcast. And when it quieted down, I said, "That's pretty badass, Andy." I said it out loud.
Oh
And people
man, I
kind
missed
of
that.
erupted, but like I was like, I didn't have the time to talk to you, but I was like, I'll stalk him in the hallway the next day.
I really appreciated you coming up to me because no, it's really cool to meet someone like in that profession, like in a non-musical like scene, and like we could also like not many people understand what it's like. We understand like the people who tour, like we understand what it is to sacrifice, to sleep on floor. I instantly knew you when you said that
Oh,
you were on tour. I instantly, like, for real, like I feel like when you meet
absolutely.
someone who was on tour, it's like it's special. Like who, especially in that era, that genre, specifically, it's crazy. So so thank you for coming out and thank you for doing this show.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah.
I
It's an honor, man.
I think touring. I don't. I think touring has changed its value, I guess, over the years. I know in the past you had a tour, and I think that was kind of like our era where you had to tour constantly,
8 months
nonstop.
out of the year.
Right.
They said
And
at least.
yeah, and it's kind of tough. Like nowadays, I think you with the internet, you could tour less and be okay. But
Yeah,
you
I
know,
think. Sorry, Andy. I think a lot of it's just like the learning experience that we all had to go through. Everybody sort of figured out like, okay, now if we do this a little smarter, a little more targeted, we can still get the same effect without running ourselves into the ground year after year. And I think that's where bands are now. And obviously, yeah, Andy, the internet works a lot towards that. So you can
Mhm.
promote easier. It's, you know, you don't have to be so much on the ground. You can get yourself out there a little bit ahead of time.
Yeah, but I think it's like just so much has changed. But I think it's great that you've come from this era where you had to tour, and I mean, how hard was it to like maintain a relate? I mean, for me, it was near impossible to maintain any kind of relationship, or
Yeah.
any kind. I mean, did you have and like a serious relationship at the time?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where it's probably a good idea to tell a little bit of my genesis, right? So, like, yeah, raised in the Southern California hardcore scene. There's been, I think, the documentary on the Showcase Theater came out, or it's in the crowdfunding thing. But like from that environment, it was like our peer group, like everybody was in bands, everybody toured, all that stuff. But it was like Thomas Guide, like you're pulling together a Thomas Guide, printing out hundreds of pages of MapQuest before you leave, getting out there. To answer your question, yes, I was in a serious relationship. Actually, my wife and I were celebrating 20 years next month of marriage, and we were
Wow.
Oh yeah.
together at that time. And so, like, I got my start in Falling Cycle, right? So, like, we went
Mhm.
out with our first tour was with Azalea Dying when, like, they were just, just newborn
Crazy.
babies in the scene, just exactly like we were, right? And they were a Life Once Lost, I think, originally, and then they had another name, but like they came from San Diego. We were from Inland Empire, and like that was my first time where I was like, I learned what it was to sleep in a van in an alley in
Mhm.
Houston, literally, and what it was to avoid traffic in the bigger cities by driving the night before to go 14 hours so that you could then just sleep in front of the venue, because the thought of sitting like on, like, I know you guys, you're in New York, right? Washington
Yeah.
Bridge. Dude, I'll never forget when we were out there. It was on Juliana Theory and Zayo tour where we were going through Jersey. I think it's Hampton Tunnel. We had too many axles. We had like one too many axles, and it was
Oh.
the first tour there where we decided to get 2-axle trailer, and they sent us through Jersey on the Washington Bridge at 7:15 a.m. on a school day. And dude, it was literally, I think, 2 hours and 45 minutes before we got to, what's that venue? It starts with a W out there.
Webster.
I think it's Webster Theater, right? Or
Yeah.
Webster Hall.
Yeah.
Webster
Webster
Hall.
Hall.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I remember, dude. I remember. And then like, but yeah, like we were just kids. And I think a lot of kids, folks, I don't mind calling early 20-year-olds, mid-20s kids, like
Right.
Yeah.
in the scope of the world, like you are, but like we had to figure out so much. And like Mike Dunlap, our drummer, man, he was amazing, dude. Like he always did the hard drives. He was always keeping everything straight with like the directions. And so like everybody finds a role too. But
Hmm.
to answer your question about relationships, right? Like absolutely it was tough. And like, Sinai Beach, Falling Cycle and Sinai Beach, like we're both like Christian metal bands, right? And like
Mhm.
from the times I was in those bands, like I can absolutely vouch for that. Like we kept to those values, right? And like we weren't perfect, but like, as far as keeping our relationships at home, like we took that really seriously. And like my wife Stephanie, that was actually one of the things that I actually, why I left was I got married December 2004. It was like 3 days after Dimebag got killed on stage, and I have my Cowboys from Hell tattoo. We came out to Cowboys from Hell in our wedding. Okay, like that's how much I
Wow.
love Pantera. But like I went on this 54-day tour with Juliana Theory and Zayo. It was like a dream tour, right? But man, when I came back, it was like we had used all our wedding endowment money, like to pay the bills, like the rent money. And you guys know this, right? Like this is why it was 8 months at least. And then like we had just started with Victory. And so there's all this pressure. We had just started with Ryan Downey. He was our manager. So he was super cool about it, but he was like, guys, this is a life, you got to go. Right. So yeah, it was tough, but I was thankful. I worked for a bike manufacturer. They paid for my benefits while I was out on tour.
Oh wow.
But that was because I worked my ass off, right? Like I was a good employee when I was there. I'd leave for 3 months, 4 months, but like whenever I came back, I busted my ass. I did well, and so they were like, we will pay for your benefits." It was probably illegal at the time. I don't know, but you know,
What
yeah,
was
Figure
your?
it out.
I was just thinking about like it's so expensive to live. You were living in California. We
yeah.
lived on the East Coast. I think in any coast, it's
Yeah.
really expensive to live. Like, how did you do it? Because we
Yeah.
both know you're not making a lot of money on tour.
No. I was making $13 an hour as an assembler at a mountain bike manufacturer, and my wife was a personal banker, probably making $10 an hour plus commission. We had a 1-bedroom apartment in Riverside, and it was in a sketchy area, but that's fine because I was raised in a sketchy area too. And that's the thing too. Like now that I'm here in Kansas, like the county I live in, like it's a wealthier county and all that stuff, but I still have to remind people, I'm Michael from the block,
Wait, so what? I
I,
mean, I would like to get to know you a little bit more
yeah,
intimately here.
yeah.
Were you like getting into fights and shit, or what? Like,
No, it was just the town that I grew up in, man. Southern California. We had one of the Air Force bases like closed down. A lot of businesses left. A lot of families left. Fast forward like decades. I think the city I used to live in, they were like in the news in the last 4 or 5 years. Like there was some corrupt local government stuff going on there. There's a lot of industrial buildings there now. Like it was a rough neighborhood I was in, right? There was this street we lived on, and kids used to do street racing. Like when I was in my formative years, like I watched somebody crash their car and like somebody died, and that happened like right across the street from me, right? um I mean, it's just crazy, right? All kinds of other stuff too, like just people casing our houses, like you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like just average, like rough, neighborhood type stuff.
Right.
But for me, my wife too. My wife is from the same area and we went to the same high school, and we talk about that, like how we tried to really cling on to what was good. And I think guitar was like a huge part for me in that too, man. Like when I got obsessed with guitar when I was 12, I had a buddy who taught me how to play a power chord, and that's still pretty much all I know how to play is power chord and maybe some diminished hammer-on stuff and some pinches. I was always really good at my pinches,
That's all
pinch
you need.
harmonics, you know.
yeah, sounds
And
nasty.
so yeah, and I played football in high school. I did wrestling a little bit too, but like I was always around a really good group of people, and so I think that's really kind of carried me into, and that was like our work ethic too. Like when we went into the band, it was like we were really hard working there for a stretch, man. Like
Yeah, I mean, you had
really,
to be.
yeah,
I'm
I
sure
mean,
that plays a
absolutely,
part in it too, right? Like you grow up and you're like, we need to do this shit like for real. Let's go. Like let's get the hell out of here. Let's go
absolutely.
do our own thing.
Absolutely, man. And that's the beauty of it too. Like, when you have a group of young men, young women like together that have that single-minded focus, as you guys know now too, you met plenty of adults, man. Like people's drive and their I don't know what happens to us, man. The world tries to beat it out of us, right? But like, I
Hmm.
feel like as a kid and as a musician, you still have that like childlike wonder and creativity, and
oh yeah.
that singular focus. It's like, oh my gosh, if you can find that in other parts of life. And that's what I would say is like one of the things that people in bands don't realize they're developing as they develop it. Like for so long, I regretted like going on tour versus college, because then like when I left, I wanted to get a quote real job. But then I
Mhm.
realized like all of my people skills came from being on the band on the road.
Big time, yeah.
100%.
Threatening promoters like, you better pay me, like
Yep.
just stuff like that, like having to figure that out, like staying in sketchy parts of town, staying in a haunted house, staying by train tracks, playing in front of 2 people or playing in front of people that are booing you, like, I mean,
You've
Yeah.
been
all that
you've
stuff.
played
That's
you've
the
played
challenge.
in front of people booing you.
Not well,
Yeah.
it's funny, I don't. Okay, this
Yeah. Okay. You know where we had that a lot.
Silent boring.
Freaking Nashville. No, and no hate towards Nashville, but like for some reason, I think they're just so like they're so spoiled. So you have to really impress them.
Yeah.
Well,
But like
that
they would always it would always be packed, but then they would just be like impress me. Like why are you here?
that is something too. Like I think the attitude, like that's the thing. Like I was telling you, Andy, before we had this conversation, kind of Derek, some of the prep, like I was telling Andy, like, oh, talk about this, talk about that. But like, there's this aspect of like when you're young, like there is a lot of arrogance, especially when you're a part of like a really niche thing like metal and hardcore and like
Absolutely.
and I remember we used to do that too. Like I'm not proud of that kind of stuff. Like you'd crap on some bands and you'd say this band is great. People did that on us when when CJ started singing. They said he sounded like Danzig, and they're just you always want to like criticize things, and I feel like it's out of insecurity. I don't know what it is, but to what you're talking about, Andy, it's like that whole thing, like it depended on the crowd. Like we played New Jersey Metal Festival, right? And we were on the main stage and we were like, oh my gosh, Dimmu Borgir's playing like 3 bands after us, Mastodon's playing, Danzig's headlining, Superjoint Ritual's playing this. And like there were definitely people in the crowd that were just like, like, who's this? Get Dimmu Borgir up here, get Dark Throne up here, get Devil Driver up here. Who are these asshats? You'd get that, but then you'd get people that, were in the front row and headbanging. And I think that's a lesson you learn too. Like, it's not about like if the whole crowd is moshing and headbanging. You have to focus on those 10 people in the front row that are like super fans. They're singing every word. Sometimes there'd be that one kid at the show that like somehow he knew every word. And I feel like that's a metaphor for life too. Like now that I'm in business for myself and like I have a full-time job, Andy, you and I work at the place where employee owners, right? Like I'm starting a podcast that at first not a whole lot of people were excited about, but I had 5 or 10 people that were excited about it. And now it's, it's just grown, and I have to focus on that, man. But all that to like reel it back in, yeah, we had some people, we had bands we toured with that didn't like us either. You know what I mean? But that the one thing is like by the end of the tour, it was like they saw like, oh, these are cool dudes. And we saw the same thing. And
Right.
that's when the cell numbers and we all had those little flip phones back then, you exchange the numbers and it's all good.
What was that first version of the smartphone like? And it flipped up. What was that
Razor.
like? No. It was like the Sidekick, right?
the
It was the
Sidekick.
Sidekick.
Oh yeah, they
Yeah.
had, like the flip to the side thing.
Yeah. I remember that.
All the cool kids had those ones. I had a
Yeah,
Nokia,
exactly.
a Nokia with Snake on it. That was about all I got.
Absolutely.
I have very fond memories of your band. I just like I mean that was like before I listened to you guys before I started touring, and I feel like you guys were one of the more heavier bands like at the time, like one of the most heavy bands, right? Like I mean I don't know of any other band like doing what you guys were doing.
I appreciate that.
Like
Yeah,
I can't even compare. Like it was so it blew my fucking mind. It was
just that driving, straightforward, hardcore, thrash almost, mixture.
yeah, like I can't even like to fully define like the subgenre of metal or heavy, whatever hardcore or whatever it
So-
is.
Michael, when you guys were coming up, I mean, with Sinai Beach, what was like the first indicator that like maybe this is something worth really pursuing? This is, either hitting the road or recording the first album or,
Yeah.
taking that next step other than just like these are my boys and like we're just having a good time.
Yeah. So like when Sinai Beach first came up, they started as a 4-piece. It was Jeff, Mike, CJ, and Logan. And I was playing for Falling Cycle, which was Waiting Until Fall originally. And I also had my other band Engraved, where I had the drop A 7-string. And at that time I was one of the only dudes in that scene that was doing the 7-string thing. Like I loved Korn, I thought Korn was amazing. I loved Cannibal Corpse, Bloodthirst, the first one they did with Colin Richardson. And when I started researching those tunings, I was like, oh my gosh, like what if I brought this stuff into this type of music?
Yep.
And Sinai Beach was starting to come up, right? They were playing, there was a local record store called Sounds Like Music, which was amazing. It was a place where actually it's funny I mentioned Korn. Korn and Ice Cube and Fred Durst all went there when Follow the Leader came out to do an album signing. Like that's how big of a deal this record store was. And Sinai Beach did, I think it was they had the paper bag demo, which I still have a copy, where they took like a stamp and stamped like wolves in sheep's clothing. Some of those tracks that were on that first album that we did with the bird and the heart, When Breath Escapes, right? But like I was just kind of friends with some of those guys, and I was hanging out at Logan's house. Logan was the original guitarist, right? And I said, hey, I've been working on this thing. Can I, while they were on a break, like I was watching them practice, and they're like, yeah, sure. I started playing some riffs and stuff. And fast forward like a week or two, they said, hey, would you want to join and be our second guitarist? And I was like, oh my gosh, like it was great. And then at that point, it made things very clear for me. I was like, all right, well, Engraved, I love Engraved, but like maybe I can bring some riffs over. And like that actually happened. Like some of those riffs on When Breath Escapes, those were Engraved riffs that I brought over. Apocalypse, the first track on Immerse, that started me and Isaac from Engraved. We were tapping on a desk at Riverside Community College, just and so like I was able to bring over some of that stuff, and they like Sinai Beach, it was always a really collaborative group. Like it was very kinetic. Like when we got together and we wrote these songs, it was like some of the songs we literally wrote in one take. It was weird. Like we would do that. And so we got the deal with Face Down, and Jason Dunn was like, I'd love to have you guys go down there. And at the time, I can't remember what studio it was, but it was the place where 18 Visions did their first full length, all on tape, analog, right? And so we recorded that album.
Sick.
And that was where it was like, okay, we're on Face Down now. Like I remember like the first show I ever went to where I met Jason. He was working the table. I bought Living Sacrifice Reborn off of him. And I was just an awkward, nerdy kid. I think I creeped him out, honestly, because I was like, it was my first show and I had all these weird questions. And then I saw him play for NIV, and then I had to talk to him. Lo and behold, like I'd be on his label one day. It was so weird. And then we did that first tour. Andrew from Figure 4, Comeback Kid, he booked the tour for us. Like it was like he was getting his practice. He's like, hey, here's where you're going to go. He basically promoted it. Like he made all the connections. And that was in many respects one of our best tours. We did it in an Astro van. The hitch broke off. My dad re-welded it for us when we got back to California. Then it broke again, and we pushed the trailer up into a U-Haul and drove a U-Haul in the van back home. And got to play with some of the other Face Down bands like Seventh Star. I think A Love for Enemies. Like we hooked up with them up in New York. That's where I met Bill and Eric. And that it's funny. A Love for Enemies was like the first band that I was like, oh, these dudes are badasses. Like I like these guys. I think I saw you were telling a story in one of the reels on Tour Buds where like they kept like you met another band that kept bats in the car.
Yeah,
like I was
that's
always
me and Derek's band.
Yeah, that was our bands.
Dude. I always brought a bat, and I brought a machete on tour.
Fuck yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I just was like, I never, and then you'd meet bands that have like shotguns, and
dude,
they
that's
carry them
insane.
across state lines and stuff, just like, but that's what it was like on the road. It was like, we take care of each other. We got to look out for each other. And like, you guys know that when you're touring with other bands, like that's where you build that camaraderie. And they're like, okay, we're going to meet you at that Denny's. Oh man, so many memories at Denny's. But like that first tour, and then to kind of reel it in again, Derek, that was where we were like, wow. And then somehow, that's when Century Media and Victory kind of took notice, and we hooked up with Ryan Downey. Jason too, he was like, I think you guys can get bigger things. If you want to get bigger, like I'll help you. We had a deal with him. And so
before we dive into record label stuff, I want to get into specifically just straight touring. Like, give me some of your favorite tour experiences, favorite bands that you toured with. I'll tell you something. Derek is is my brother and probably my best friend in life, and I met him on tour. Like that tour is special. You get to meet amazing people. Derek and I have been
Yeah.
friends for over 10 years, 15 years now, dude.
Yeah,
I don't even know how long.
years
Time
are going up
flies.
and up.
Long time ago. Like I want your best tour, your favorite tour, and do you still talk to some people? You have made some best friends from tour.
Yeah, man. Um, Probably one of my favorite tours. It's kind of a tie, and I think the guys in the band would agree with me on this. There were a couple tours they did after I left, so I they might have different answers, but like when we toured with Throwdown and Most Precious Blood, that was just because we toured with Throwdown. They were our heroes, man.
Yeah.
Like we could not believe that we had the opportunity to tour with them. They were supporting Haymaker, and we were just huge fans. And then when they ended up being like really cool, down to earth dudes, like I've kept in touch with like Dave. I've kept in touch with Matt. It's been a while since I talked to Matt, but like yeah, two examples of dudes that like I've continued to keep in touch with. And then we toured with Bleeding Through as well, and
That's huge.
that for me, actually that was probably my favorite tour for many reasons, just because um I really bonded really well with the guys in my own band and the Bleeding Through guys. Like Brian Lepke, actually left-handed guitarist, like him and I, man, like we had a very similar energy on guitar, and he introduced me to Crowbar on that tour. And that was the only time I had heard Crowbar up to that point was Beavis and Butthead making fun of him being fat dudes that played. Remember, if you guys have not gone back to old Beavis and Butthead video critique, like highlight videos
That's
from a
great.
while, go back. It's so cool. But watch them make fun of Crowbar, Pantera. No, they never made fun of Pantera, I don't think. But like I remember, like I can remember it like it was yesterday. I'm sitting in our van and their van with Brian Lepke. He's in the driver's seat, I'm in the passenger seat, and we're both just staring forward, just headbanging to Crowbar. And again, it was like when you're just getting your start and bigger bands take you out like that, like they're not getting much on a return of investment from you.
Right.
They're investing in you, right? They see something in you, and they're like, I just like you guys. I like your music. I just want to bring you on this tour because I think it'd be fun. And
That doesn't happen
like
often. That's so rare.
and I don't know what it's like these days. I mean, I heard the Spirit Box story with Shinedown. Did you guys hear about that? I mean, I was in tears when I heard that, when he was like, the singer from Shinedown like paid their debts off or did something. I'm like, ooh, like dang, but like we we ended up borrowing equipment from these bands eventually. Like, I mean, Bleeding Through, it's a famous unfortunate situation, like, but that wreck that they were using our van like on that tour, right?
Yeah.
Like um and we shared ideas. Like I'm pretty sure we co-wrote songs together without even knowing it. You borrow stuff on stage, like you see, I really like the way they move on certain parts. I currently do nothing on fast thrashy parts. I should
Yeah.
try this. You're just, it's a science experiment. So those would probably be my favorite tours, man. And then show wise, like Cornerstone was really cool. New Jersey Metal Fest was really cool.
Mhm.
We got to do this crazy thing in Hollywood where we opened for Strapping Young Lad and Meshuggah. It was us and Strapping Young Lad and Meshuggah. And Thomas Hawk watched Mike do his
Insane.
sound check, and Mike about shit his pants because the drummer from
That's
Meshuggah
insane.
was sitting there headbanging to Mike doing a sound check and being supportive. And like we knew
Insane.
people like still I still freak out when I see Meshuggah stuff because I'm like
Yeah.
they're still going, and they're
It's
one of the
insane.
greats,
Yeah. How
So
about, I mean, that's all the great and best parts of touring and being in bands. Like that's all the
yeah,
fun stuff that everybody hears about and gets to see.
yeah,
Um, not necessarily, I guess sometimes as like your best tour is not always like, or your favorite tour is not always like the best tour people wise. Like you could have the best, like the tour me and Andy went on together. It was okay. It wasn't anything special, but like we met and made so many good friends on that tour that it like didn't matter. Like if there was 10 people, sometimes you catch a good one or whatever, and you're crushing your Little Caesars pizza every night. And but on
Worst.
the other side of it, like was there any like misery stories where like you're just on the road and you're like, I need to get home because this is not good
Dude.
for my
and,
health
and
or
not to
whatever.
mention broken. You know, how many I've had these too. But I'll just say one thing: like, it's a bad tour when you break your cell phone because you're just pissed, and it's mostly due to relationships. But yeah,
Yeah, well, I mean, some of the worst moments were when we got sick of each other,
Yeah.
and there's nowhere to go.
Mm.
There's nowhere to go, man. And it's like
You
these are
guys are
your brothers.
smelly in the desert.
Yeah, there's only so much changes in music that you can do. Like, you can you can only go back to like, Tupac and Depeche Mode and Nazem and and you're stuck. You're stuck with these folks, right? And it's a blessing and a curse at the same time. It's like, wow, we're literally living out our dream right now. There's a kid in, Spokane right now that has been waiting for us to play for ever since we announced this thing. He knows every word, and we're sitting here being a bunch of assholes right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And missing home. Homesickness is a real thing. Here's the
Yeah.
other
Oh, yeah.
thing that I now know because of all the health things that have happened to me later in life. But man, when you're on tour, you eat garbage. And man, go into a gas station. Um, especially back in the day, we like here we have like organic sections in gas stations now and tour. But like, man, it was like there was somewhere it's like, all you just give me a banana. I just need something healthy.
Hmm.
Like my body, I have a stomach virus that I
Yeah.
probably got from the spaghetti and the this and the
The
whatever the
gas
promoter.
station taquitos.
Yeah, on the roller, man, on the little
Oh,
Yeah,
roller. You eat
absolutely.
them and like gator jerky and just, all these different things, but like you're not really healthy. Like it's
yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
healthy.
It's
You're not
true. It's
sleeping.
true.
And that's why I loved it when I started to see like bands start to do that. Like I remember when I would see like, when we went on tour with Bleeding Through, actually, it's funny because like Brandon runs Rise Above Fitness now, right? But like even back in the day, like he was yanking the weights out of the trailer, like, the bands that are now, they understand like I need to be in shape if I'm gonna do this long term. That's the other thing is like we weren't healthy, man. I mean, you're not sleeping. You're getting injuries because you're carrying your stuff up a flight of stairs. Some of those places, they're like legendary in these cities. It's a basement,
Yep.
and
Mhm.
oh man, how are we going to get our bass drum down there? Oh, we can't fit our bass drum. Can we borrow your bass drum? Um,
Yep. And we used to
lot
carry around
lots
those
of that.
big giant refrigerators. I'm a bass player, so those cabs are
Oh
like,
yeah, did you
like
have an
what
eight
are
by
we
ten
doing? Now
yam
I
peg,
look back and like, what a dumbass. Like
dude?
you can
So
get the
dumb.
same you can get the same
So
sound with
dumb.
something so much smaller. Not
Yeah,
hurt yourself every day.
absolutely.
Yeah, I was always sick on tour for some reason. I mean,
You're
I
sick all
think
the time.
I know. Stop it. Okay, but I just it's miserable when you're on tour and you're sick. There's nothing worse than that. You just want your bed. You
Yeah.
want to be coddled
Yeah.
and not by your friends in your band.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like I tell people it's a joke that I make. Like, it was back when I had quit the band. I said, I'd rather sleep with my wife than five stinky dudes on a floor.
Yes. Hey, did you have a tough time with getting acclimated like back home? Like after a tour? Like I always had this like feeling like I was you sleep on so many different like floors or beds or your
Yeah,
fucking
buddy.
van. Like when you're home, you're like,
Yep.
shit, I gotta go. I gotta, like, and you realize, oh my God, I'm
Yeah.
home. It takes like a week or two to get settled.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And definitely like the conversations that you have too. Like I don't want to make myself sound like I was a ranger going to war, trying to come home,
Of course.
from a war torn place, like, oh, it's
Right.
so hard to adjust. But like
No, but
but it is a different world because you're playing in front of crowds that want to see you. You're selling merch, you're taking pictures with people, you're autographing things.
it's work.
it's
It's
it,
no, it
it
is.
is. It
It's not
is a
just a
lot of work.
party. I don't think that's one of the things that we kind of want to bring up, like in this show. It's like we're interviewing bands, we're going to these shows, we're trying to bring awareness to like just how tough it is. Like we want people to come
Oh,
out. We want to bring
thank
people
you.
out to shows, make you support your local bands, support these touring bands. It's so huge because these people are working so hard. They're giving up their lives for this. They're everything. And seeing like live music is special. Like it's different
Yeah.
than popping on your favorite playlist or whatever it is. It's just there's an energy to it that you can't explain. And so we want people to come out and like understand that it's not just a party, it's work.
No, it's actually quite the opposite.
Yeah.
It is the opposite of a party. Everybody loves sharing their best moments. They don't like sharing their most vulnerable, dark moments. And every band out there right now, like if you listen to a band and they've got more than like 2 albums and you've seen them come through your town once or twice, there is a lot of trauma there. Whether they tell you there is or not, but there's trauma,
Yeah.
and they're dealing with it, and it's a huge sacrifice to come, and yeah, you're giving up your years, to do that. So
Yeah. I mean, and another thing that we want is to have people like you on this show where like you've done it.
oh yeah.
You've had this level of success, and we want to learn from you. We want our viewers and other younger bands, up and coming bands, to learn from you, people like you. And it's great to have this. And what do you how would you recommend, would you even recommend a label now, like after going through all the shit that you went
you
through? Is it
know
worth it to you?
No, and here's the thing, like, as far as Face Down goes, I know Face Down is still putting out albums. They still got bands and stuff, and I think they're one of the greats, right? Like they're one of the best indie labels that stood the test of time. I know Victory went under. Our catalog is owned by Concord Music now. I've talked to the people at Concord. They're amazing people.
They
They bought
sold,
the
right? They
what's
sold to
that?
them.
Yep,
Tony sold it to them. Yeah.
they bought the entire Victory
Yeah.
catalog. So like if you find our stuff on Spotify now, which I'm also grateful for, like anybody watching or listening, yeah, you can still go listen to Sinai Beach now because Concord has it, but like you'll see
Hmm.
that Concord piece there. What I know now, dude, I wouldn't do it. I'd Bandcamp it. I would set up social media. I'd
Mhm.
sacrifice the time. When you were talking earlier about how a lot's changed, I mean, I'd get a web store going. I would make compelling merch. I'd make things that people want to wear. I would think about it more like a business, which is kind of what I wanted to talk about now too, because
100%.
like it if it's not going to be your business, you better be building some business skills, right? And so, but to the label thing, yeah, bro, like I wouldn't do the label again. I think we sound scanned. I think I don't even know. Downey was sharing us our sound scans with us, and I know we broke the 100,000 mark on Immersed, which
That's
back in
sick.
the day
That's
was
sick.
was
No, that's
great.
Yeah.
sick.
And I
That's
think it took
insane.
a few
That's
years to get there,
insane.
but at the same time, like so much has changed, like with streaming music, and like we all three of us, we grew up in that era when like Metallica suing Napster, and we had LimeWire, and these
Yep.
things, and we but I would be like, there's bands that do it really well, like shameless plug, like I love what Alex Terrible does with Slaughter to Prevail. Like I am
Yeah.
a freaking fan of whatever they do. Like I joke with my buddies, like the moment they drop something, I listen to it, and I
Mhm.
love how he's got the masks, the Kid of Darkness mask. And
Hmm.
I love too, like how Chris Garza from Suicide Silence, like he's made his own podcast. I freaking love that show, man. And it's funny because like they've had some guys from the era we came from on that show too. But you see these dudes, they know and they realize, like, I can't be like a touring musician ever, and the label certainly isn't going to pay my bills, you know. But
Yeah.
where a label makes sense is if they are seriously going to inject a lot of enthusiasm and bring a lot of people, because I don't want to make it sound like too, like, there's a reason Sinai Beach we didn't do it ourselves, right? I think Macklemore at the time, he was starting to do like his own things. It is
Mhm.
hard work, man. And the labels, they work really hard and they have connections you don't.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
instant clout. This band's on Century Media, and the equipment companies are like begging to send them equipment, guitars, things like that. So like there's a lot that comes with it, man. But like,
Don't you feel like with the internet, how it is now, it's become less like, you think of TV, even like or HBO, the Netflix came and just changed the fucking game. Now the internet, as long as you're on a good playlist, it doesn't matter what record label you're on.
right. But
It's
the
kind of
whole
weird.
I agree with you that the technology brings a great bunch of power to the common person, right? Like you can wield it, right? But who knows how to wield it to get the highest ROI, right?
Mhm.
Who knows how to do it exactly right? Because there's a lot of folks out there that have been around forever, and
But you're flip flopping now, so now you're saying to get signed.
well, I'm saying there's a benefit
No, I know, I
to
get it.
that. But if I could do it with what I know now, I'd go on my own, dude. I'd go on my
Yeah.
own. There's not a label in the world that could tell me, and I have a hard drive. I've got my songs. I've got some things. If I can get this released, I'm gonna do it myself, right?
Mhm.
I would never sign with a label ever again.
Did you
I
have? I've heard some. I mean, I'm sure you don't. Maybe you don't want to bash anyone, but I've heard so many terrible stories about Victory.
mm.
Go, go.
Yeah. So my experience with Victory was Tony, he flew us out there, man, and had a limo pick us up from the airport. Got us pizza. We
I'm
went up into the
sold. I'm
building.
sold.
Yeah. Like we were all flew out there. Ryan was with us, man, and I think it was a good conversation. In the meantime too, um
Leslie says so
Leslie.
bougie. It's true.
And in the meantime, I can't remember his name from Century Media. What was his name? What's the guy's name who runs Century Media? He has curly hair. I can't remember his name. Nice dude as well. We were going through the process with both of them. Like we were trying to figure out like who wants to sign us for the next full length, Um I think it was Clint from Victory. He was in AR.
Okay.
Great dude. We got to stay at his house. He was always very supportive of us. Um, you know, I was in the band. I recorded the album. I went out to Victory again, with the band. We signed a bunch of albums and things. Got it all out there. And then, I left the band after that tour with Zayo and Juliana Theory. The album came out a month later. And it was everywhere we wanted it to be. But I think it was a 5-album deal that we signed,
Oh
right?
shit.
And you know, I can't remember how it went down, but Victory eventually released When Breath Escapes. They repackaged it. Actually, I have the version of it with the different artwork and stuff,
Mhm.
and had they bought it off of Face Down, and I think that might have met like the second album deal piece. But then when the band, like, dudes got married, life got serious, man. Like they went to Europe again, and decided to call it quits. It was like we were still on that whole
Yeah.
thing. So one day, and it's funny, I think it was like 2010. Logan and I are talking, and we're like, man, we should get the band back together. And I wonder, like, if like Victory would consider it like our third album, right? Like, what do we do? And so I send Tony an email, and I was not a white collar guy. Like I was a blue collar dude working in a warehouse. I didn't know email etiquette. When you write stuff in 2-dimensional, like in 2D, it removes all your personality. It's like I'm not sitting in front of Tony Brummel right now when I'm asking him this question. But I said something like, "Hey Tony, hope you're doing well. We're thinking about, maybe recording like an album or whatever. Would we be obligated to release it or whatever?" And he took that wrong. and, he- and and
He
and it was
hired a
like
lawyer.
his response was just abrasive, and it was like something about like, if you don't want to be on this label anymore, you're free to do as you wish, or something like that. It was like, but it was like, I, I
I wouldn't trust it.
it probably would have been better if I would have just called him,
Yeah,
and had the
yeah.
conversation, because that is one thing that I will say is that when I was there, Tony and I connected really well. And
Mhm.
I think at the time, like I was a really intense dude. He was obviously a really intense dude. He, kind of talked to me as we were kind of talking and eating pizza, and like I inhaled my pizza, like, because I was super hungry from the thing. And he was like, "Hey, you want some more pizza?" So anyway, Nothing interesting there. Never gotten in any fights or anything, but I think, all the other stories are well documented out there,
Of course.
So I will say, like, Tony's a businessman,
That's it. That's really what it comes to through and through. He's a businessman. He's,
Yep.
does what's best for his business.
And I feel like that's why a lot of artists, man, we like when you come up, you think playing your guitar is going to be enough, but you have to be, you got to be savvy,
it's
and you
like
got to
10%.
exactly,
when
maybe
when it
5.
comes down to it, it's just not.
Yep.
That's the easy part, right? Like everybody can play the guitar well at that level. That's what
Right.
I tell people all the time. Like when you get to a certain level, like anybody can do what you're doing musically. Obviously, like as a group, you make different sorts of music and different things are special. But you're, if it's just music, you're interchangeable. Like you got to make yourself stand out. You got to be doing the things that everyone else isn't doing.
Absolutely.
And that's
Leslie,
what
by
makes
the
all the work.
way, Leslie is my sister. Hi, Leslie.
Yo, what's up, sister?
Hi, Leslie.
She has supported me through all of this, man. She went to all the shows too, growing
Oh,
up,
I love that.
and
I
yeah,
love
man,
that.
Incredible.
she's 2 years younger than me, so yeah.
I wanted my father to come to one. I had my brother Nick, who would come to my show. I wanted my dad to come to one of my shows. Even like we had like a final show. He didn't come. He didn't show up. You know what? That brings up. This is more of like a therapy session now. What do you guys have good dads? What do you guys? No, I'm just kidding.
I mean,
no, but seriously though, it's so nice that you have like family that
The support
gives a
system.
shit about you and all that era too. It was. I mean, all right. So you're on tour. You do this. You're out of the band. Why did you leave? What did you guys beef? Did you guys have some shit? Did you make up? You kiss and make up or what?
yeah. So for me, it was like I got married. I was the first guy to get married, man, and that's the first dude that decides to do that or like get a serious job. It's like cheating on the band, right?
Kind
It's
of.
like, man, we just signed
Fucked
this
up.
5-album deal, and you miss your wife.
Yeah, you're committing to you're committing to life. How dare you?
Yeah, dude, exactly. And living in California, and then like I'd go on tour, and we would do like Mike, man, I cannot understate Mike's just awesomeness throughout the whole band thing, man. Like he would count up the merch, man. He'd count up what we earned and all that. But you start to see, after you're on the road, you're just going, man, if I continue like this, I've got this life at home that is going to literally be frozen in time, and it's probably not just that, it's going to degrade. Like my relationship with my wife will get worse. Like my bride, my high school sweetheart, the person that I just swore to love for better or worse, like I can't take her on tour with me right now. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, I'll never forget, her and I went and saw Tim McGraw and Faith Hill, and we looked at each other and we're like, wouldn't it be nice to just like if we could have done what they what they did, you know but like the being the first guy, that did, man, that caused a lot of ruckus, because you know they knew, I think too, they knew like, hey, if we lose Michael, or we lose anybody, really, I don't want to pump myself up, but if we lose somebody, it's going to be really hard to replace that person. They're not replaceable. Like we grew up together. We
Right.
spent time building potato cannons and doing airsoft wars in the backyard together, between practice. I mean, it was a big deal. So I think there was beef that was just natural to that whole process. And yeah, man, it hurt. Like I made a statement when I left the band, and I didn't disparage anybody at the time, but I think there was beef, because it was like, dude, you're leaving. That sucks, like, and I started working for Downey, which I felt like was really cool, because it was like, I told the guys too, I was like, hey, like now I'll be able to support you. I'll give you fire support while you're on the tour, and while you're on the road. And so like I helped Logan like get his endorsement from Crank Amps, and like Daniel, the bass player who replaced Jeff, like the Warwick sponsorship, and and then I was also
so then they liked you because you were helping them. I see.
well, you know, and I did like the first music video, like with Darren Doan, and then like I wasn't in the second one, and like I went and met him for dinner after that shoot while I was working for Downey, and it was awkward because it was like, damn, I wasn't in the video, I didn't do the shoot, and
Yeah.
my buddy Sean had replaced me on guitar, and he was from Falling Cycle, and so like we just so even through like the the uh anxiousness and the the separation of divorcing myself from this dream, like we found a way to stick together. And then as far as like making amends, yes, absolutely, like within like a year, like we made amends, and then we did the reunion back in 2013. We headlined Face Down Fest 2013. Then I left California in 2015, and they said, hey Michael, do you want to do Face Down Fest again? It was 2017, and like Steph and I were just starting our life here. We had just beat 10 years of infertility. We had our little one on the way, and I was like, you guys go for it. And they
Congratulations. That's awesome.
yeah, thanks man. And so that show is also on YouTube as well, the At the Glass House, but 2017. So yeah, and I told them all about this tonight too. We still have a chat. We've had had a Sinai Beach chat for 10-15 years.
That's awesome, man.
That's amazing.
And we still
sick.
Like Sean went down to Furnace Fest this last time, and he was sharing like videos from the bands playing, bands we grew up watching, and
yeah, that looked like an incredible time.
I mean, you guys would fit on. You guys would fit on that bill. You should just do it.
We've talked about it. We wonder if that would be a thing. I think everyone would mobilize for that, but
it's a no-brainer, I think.
Yeah,
that looks like such a great festival, like amazing.
Yeah,
like everyone, it's just like
one out there for sure.
Easily, like that gives me waves of like LimeWire, MP3.com, freaking I don't even
viruses
know.
all over your computer.
Viruses.
Yeah.
So I guess okay, we made amends. Now you guys, keep in touch. I'm similar. I keep in touch with some of the guys from my band. I used to play in a band called Hell Within from Massachusetts.
I've been listening today, dude. That is some good stuff, bro.
Thank you. Yeah, so like I keep in touch with some of them, some more than others. I kind of joined later, a little after midway through their journey. I was in other bands around there, and became friendly and whatnot. So I was like the new guy. But ended up kind of working myself in, trying to make myself valuable. But after I was also as we were phasing out, our guitar player was married, he had a kid, and I was like on the brink of like, I was living in Jersey for like from Monday to Wednesday, and then I take the bus every week Thursday up to Boston and do like weekenders, or if we had like a longer tour, I would just go on tour. So I was like just all over the place, making $100 a day where I could while I was home. And then eventually it just, after I did it for like a year and a half, and it was brutal. And it just got to the point where like, all right, is this, I was with my girlfriend, my now wife. It just was time, like, and it sucked. It's a terrible conversation to have. It feels awful. You don't know if you're doing the right thing. Thankfully it worked out, and all transitioned well, and whatever. Same thing, took a lot of skills, networking skills and stuff into real life. But
Absolutely.
it is that transition time, that 3 to 5 years even of like, I miss this shit a lot. Like how did you deal with that? Did you jump right into a job? Was it tough?
Yeah, man. So I did. My whole mission in life was to support my family at that point. And so, I tried tuning my guitar up to E, and like playing on the worship team at church, and like getting delay pedals and all that stuff. And I just couldn't do it, man.
Yeah.
I put all the heavy strings back on my guitar. I started writing again. This hard drive that I'm telling you about, like I've got 20 songs that are finished. There's been some people who have heard it. Like, so for me, it's been, I will get this out when I can, and I'll play. But it was an identity crisis for sure. And you know, as far as there was a part in your question when you were talking that really resonated with me. Oh, the thing that helped me get through it, honestly, um, was the fact that I got to say I did it.
100%.
I mean, you
I think
know,
about I still do that. You know, like I'll be in a room
bro,
and I'll be like, I'm the only one here who's done this.
I'm the only
Yeah.
one here
Yeah.
who's played on a stage and in multiple cities and, you know, has recorded music, and I can go reference it. And and it was like people told me it was the dumbest thing I'd ever done back when I quit, because like
Mhm.
we were getting the sponsorships like from Gibson, and like there's all these crazy stuff. They're like, you have dreamed about this your whole life, and I'm like, you don't understand. Like, I accomplished so much more than I ever
Yeah.
set out to do. And we saw our friends getting big houses and deals and on being in guitar world and all that stuff, but I was like, man, I get to say I did it. And that was that identity crisis. Like, athletes go through that too, right? Like,
Mhm.
they're one of my buddies that I had on my show, he calls it athlete privilege. Like, it's very limited. There's a very limited amount of time, and use it while you can, and um when they don't get to be an athlete anymore, they get a career-ending injury. It's devastating,
Mhm.
because their entire identity is wrapped up in that, man. And if there's anything I can tell any dudes coming up, any gals coming up right now in the scene, or even with their YouTube channel, like, that's the thing that I've been so encouraged by, is seeing like kids that are shredding like almost better than
Insane.
Steve Vai
Yeah.
Mhm.
on YouTube. Is just remember, like, your identity isn't in that. Like, that's part of who you are, and you're an amazing person and you do really cool stuff. But like, what do you need to be the person you are when that if that goes away, or you
Right.
decide one day, I'm not happy with this anymore, you know.
Yeah.
But it took
I think
years, Derek. It took years, bro.
it's
Yeah,
like
I
how
agree. Same
it's
same thing.
I
Mm.
mean, I really relate. I went through a deep depression for years until I joined Glass Lungs, and then that like kind of put a band-aid on it, but like we didn't really
Mm.
fully tour. And then I think doing this is really kind of satiating that for
Yeah,
some
buddy.
reason, like
100%. I
because
agree.
there's something about people like and music that's special. Like and people in music, it's like I don't know, like when you talk and you tell those stories, I feel like I was there.
Yeah.
And I understand what it was like. I understand when you're like, hey, I got to do that. You know how many times we had to remind ourselves on tour when we were like broken down somewhere in the middle of the United States, and we're like, you know what, a like a band, like so many bands cool like wish they were broken down on in the middle of tour because like they're stuck in their garage or basement.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's hard to have that perspective, but we're here now, and it's like holy shit, we did it. We did and you did some awesome shit, man. And you know what, you're part of like this you are seriously like you and your band made like my how am I trying to say this, you
It's
guys
like
made
it's like a generational.
no, Sinai Beach is like one of the reasons why I thought it was like Face Down was like so amazing, and it was a dream come true to sign with that label because of you. So it was like when I got signed, like you already like paved the way, and dude, I it's like a full circle moment for me, man. It's sick. It was like it was a dream come true. I was like, this is gonna be awesome. I mean, it's funny though. In retrospect, is like you get signed, you're like, and then you don't like make money. You're like, wait, what happened?
Dude, Jason was so cool to us too, man. Like, he was so understanding. Like, I remember calling him up and just bitching his ear off about about the costs, and like, when are we gonna recoup, and when are we gonna see this? And
Mhm.
he was so patient, man. And we had some times too where we went out there for meetings, and when he launched Strike First, he wanted to make the Wolves and Sheep's Clothing paper bag demo like the release. And so, that was to kind of help launch Strike First. But like the amount of grace that man had in,
Mhm.
in talking to us, man. Because that's the thing, is like, you don't know. And can I just can I just pause and tell you and honor what you said just now, man, about like what you said about us and thinking that that was a cool part of becoming on Face Down. Like a week ago, like I didn't even know who you were, bro, and now I'm sitting here in my basement and I'm hearing you say that, and that resonates. And I'll tell you what, like that is a gift to me, man. And I know too, like when the other guys, when they hear this, like they're probably gonna wig out on this discussion too. But you know,
That's awesome.
it's so important, man, to honor our stories, dude. Like, and the more that I've been thinking about your guys' this show, you're calling it a show, right? It's not a podcast, it's a show, right?
It's kind of both.
You
We
do
have
both?
like when we get our full episodes done, that's like the
Okay.
show. This is kind of along
can't
the
wait.
lines of a podcast. And
I can't wait to see those full episodes. But like the legacy that that you're doing, I feel like this could become like a Encyclopedia Britannica kind of thing for people, for bands. Like, it's education. So
we hope
anyway,
so.
sorry.
Thank you.
Just a meta point, man.
We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be sick. I think it's gonna be interesting. It's a journey, and there are growing pains in this process, but we're still enjoying. I think it's really cool to like understand, to like appreciate the journey instead of try to be there
You have
fast.
to.
Just
You
gotta.
have
Yeah,
to.
some of our hardships led to doing this live thing. So just to keep things rolling and like finding new ways, and just a way to kind of get our stuff out before the real stuff is ready.
Absolutely.
Like getting there and having real conversations with people and in real time is the part that I love about even doing the show. Like actually being there and interviewing them at shows and things like that is,
Absolutely.
it's fun. It's therapeutic in a way. Like, everybody has little pieces of the experiences that we've all had, with their own perspective on it. And sometimes that helps, like the stuff that you think is misery and was horrible, they kind of can turn into something that was like, oh, I actually do appreciate that part.
Absolutely, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Michael,
So
one thing I really want to. I know you're a busy man, you're a family man, and all this stuff. So I know your time is precious. I just want to
All good,
understand
dude.
something because this is kind of a hot topic right now. You went on tour with As They Lay Dying.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
you mentioned that earlier. What was your experience like with Tim Lambesis? And like,
Yeah.
do you know him still, or what's the deal with that?
No, I haven't talked to Tim in decades, but what I will tell you is that when we went on tour with As They Lay Dying, when I was in Falling Cycle, that was in the very early years of As They Lay Dying. They had not started to adopt that sort of Norwegian, Swedish sort of sound. Tim actually talked about this on Garza podcast last year. I think he talked about the early days, and he mentions going on tour with Falling Cycle. And he even mentioned at some point talking to some of their guys about possibly joining up with As They Lay Dying, and I was one of those guys. Okay, so Tim and I were in a Guitar Center. I think it was in Florida, and he was saying, "Hey, how do you do those pinch harmonics?" And I had a guitar, he had a guitar, and we were playing, and that was kind of a cool moment that I remember, having with Tim on those tours. And he would lead Bible studies too. I mean, that was another thing that was really interesting,
Oh,
right? Like,
wow.
because when we were on tour with Falling Cycle, like we'd have Bible studies and stuff too, because Falling Cycle was a Christian band as well. But as far as all the controversy, like with his prison time and all that, and then what's going on now, I have no clue about that, man. And I will tell you though that when he was in the news and all that stuff, I think myself, like everybody else, we had this like sort of like outrage, like what the hell, what what is going on? And
Mhm.
I think like the lesson, and if I've watched what he's shared since then, the lesson is like to really like guard your mind and make sure you have people around you that are going to look out for you. And I think another thing too is like you have to be willing to be challenged in life. Like if you want to get better, like as a man and a human being, you've got to have wise counsel. And I think that's what I kind of took away from that whole situation was like you heard the stories and the accounts of people all around him, and it was like, he was getting isolated and, not talking. And I think that's a metaphor for like everything in life, honestly, like,
Yes.
and mental health too, so, but no, that's the coolest, coolest story that I have about Tim is, teaching him how to do a pinch harmonic long ass time ago. And then, the Bible study thing, man, just back in the day, that was a trip. But, it's funny because Falling Cycle, like that was our first tour where we had started to have like that whole melodic, Norwegian metal sound too.
Mhm.
And we're borrowing a lot from At the Gates and all that kind of stuff. And I think, him and Jordan was the drummer at the time. Jordan was another guy. I kept in
Right.
touch with Jordan for a while, actually. I saw him at a Fear Factory show, and it
Great
sucked.
drummer, man.
Yeah. Oh,
So
dude.
good.
And he's such a good dude. Like he was just always just a really good supportive dude. I remember seeing him. We were at Fear Factory, and it was kind of sad because I think it was their original drummer. Like this is when he wasn't be able to keep up anymore, and his drums were really heavily triggered. And it was like they're trying to do replica, and it was off. And I was looking at Jordan. We were like, dude, what's going on? Like this is our hero. Sorry, random war story there, um, but yeah,
I
but I
I
don't
will
know, Dave.
I will say this. We have a drummer here, me. You have a guitarist, bass player. I look for the right amount. I would play for Hannibal Lecter. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm down. I don't know about you guys, but maybe we could shoot this out there to Mr. Tim from As I Lay Dying. Well, if there's the right amount, we could do
Start a
this.
little something up.
Yeah.
Oh, dude. Well, I will say it's funny, like, since I've been in the band and about touring, like I will never tour again, right? Because of what I went through with the touring stuff. I
Mhm.
always liked recording so much more. And so, I think local live shows are great and all that stuff, but like I've had that conversation of like, oh, you play an instrument, I play an instrument, we should do a band or whatever. I've been in the awkward practice when you and the coworker decide it's a good idea and then you realize you have no chemistry. And so I've told people like it's really hard to even get me in a garage to practice with other people anymore.
Yep.
But again, like that's where like the advancements in technology, like nothing against you, Andy, but I use I use Easy Drummer. I love Easy Drummer.
Disgusting. Disgusting.
The
Ew.
fact that I can have Mike
Ugh.
Tepesta's drum set like on my computer and like, get, but
I get it, but I'm offended. I get it.
but that's made it really easy for me because I mean I tried to start up some other bands after Sinai Beach and I tried, man, trying to get a vocalist, dude, it is so hard, man. And the older we get, the flakier. It's not even being flaky. It's just we have obligations.
shit
We've
going
got
on.
kids.
Time is more precious. It's like time is you don't have it
Yeah.
just to throw it around if you don't care about something. I
Yeah.
don't know. But yeah, listen, Tim, if you're seeing this,
Andy's
let's
looking for
go.
a job.
I'm looking for a job.
Hey,
Let's go.
Just
I'm looking to play drums again professionally.
do what I do on my podcast, man. I just start tagging people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just tag
we'll
them
get him in
and
there.
they either acknowledge or they don't. And either way, it's I mean, he's obviously he's a talented dude, man. I mean,
Of
he
course.
played guitar for what was that, Perithion. I couldn't believe, or no, that was Andrew Godwin from Embodiment who is who taught me. Actually, Andrew is the one who taught me how to do a squeal.
Sick.
I was Embodiment played at the showcase, and it was with like Project 86 or something. And I went up on the stage and I was like, Andrew, how do you do that? And he was like, bro, you take your pick and you go like this and you angle it. And then I think he even let me like pluck his guitar like after they were done. And that's all she wrote. That's why like in Sinai Beach, like you hear whenever I do a squeal, it pinches it. Thank you, Andrew Godwin, man. Shout.
There you go.
Sick.
So
Sick. I love that. Real quick before we wrap this up, I wanted to touch on like the fact that you had a tour with you guys, Zayo and Juliana Theory. Like you will never see that again.
no.
That is so cool though. Like I love that like mixed genre tours.
Yeah.
That's like emo. I mean, I get it. Brett was in Zayo, so it kind of made sense.
Yeah.
Wait,
Dude.
did he play with Zayo and Juliana Theory at that tour?
No, he was exclusively Juliana Theory. Yeah. And you know who else played that tour and is freaking incredible and so underrated is Open Hand. They
Oh, I
were,
remember them.
oh my gosh, those guys they were freaking geniuses, man. Just
Yeah.
geniuses. And that album that they did in 2005, like that's one of my wife's favorite albums of all time from that era is the Open Hand album. I can't remember what it's called, but yeah, it was us, Open Hand, Juliana Theory, and Zayo. And that was my last tour with the band, and that's where a lot of the hardest stuff happened. But at the same time, like to your point, Derek, when you say like you could have like a really hard tour but look back on it with like a fond memory, and oh my gosh, yeah, I mean we had such a ball, dude, getting to know those guys. And like Russ from Zayo was great. Brett was great. At first I didn't know about Brett. I was like, seems like he's really full of himself. He's got his fingers on his ear and he's going la 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 la, back behind the place. But then like you start to get to know these guys and you're like, oh my gosh, like I love these guys, all their idiosyncrasies and everything. And then like yeah, Scott Mellinger and Dan Wayant, like such a trip, those guys, man. Just such good dudes. And the places we played like I still see like some of my favorite bands, like Seven Dust plays at this place in Alabama. I can't remember where it was, but it's the one that has like the raised piece that goes over the alley. It's a really big spot. It might even be in Atlanta. I might be screwing it up, but like when I look at those places, I go, "Oh, that's the place we played with Zayo and Juliana Theory." That one that I messed up in New York. What was it? Oh,
Webster Theater.
Webster Theater. We played that one with Juliana Theory and
Webster
Zayo.
Hall.
Webster Hall, yeah. And I
So
remember it because I was on the balcony. I was on the side watching Chip from Juliana Theory because he's a badass drummer, dude. I mean, he was so good. But I kind of lost my train of thought. That's happened a lot during this talk because I'm having such a good time talking with you guys. I imagine this is probably going to happen during these live shows to you guys a lot. You're just going to be
That's what we love.
wrangling
We
squirrels,
love
man.
the realness and we go off on
Yeah.
tangents all the time, but that's where you get the good stuff,
Absolutely.
There is also something to be said about like personal fulfillment. Like I've never made more money than I do now, and that's not a flex at all. This is what I'm trying to get at is I was more happy broke, not knowing what meal I was going to eat next. And not knowing if I was gonna shit myself in the middle of the desert because I can't find a toilet nearby. Like legitimately, I was like begging the driver, about the singer. I was like, "Chris, pull over. What do you see, man?" I'm like, "I'm gonna shit myself. I'd rather
behind that pylon."
Dude, I was happier just like in those moments than I don't know, not than doing well. And
Right.
Doing well in my bank account. And I don't know. I don't think my body could ever handle that type of tour ever again. But I think there's something to be said about just kind of following your passion, following your heart, and is just kind of continuing and never giving up. Even when you're like older, like I don't know. I mean, you're doing a podcast, we're doing this, and like
Yep.
I love that. We're not going to stop. I know you're not going to, and I know you're
No.
you're going to blow up, man. What? So please tell us about your show.
Yeah. So my show, it's funny because it actually is punk rock, man. Its origins are punk rock. So I got laid off in 2023. Most traumatic thing that's ever happened to me. I was a top performer at the company. Like I was doing really well, and then I got riffed, reduction in force with a bunch of other people, and because I couldn't like find a job, like I started my own business. It was a business growth coaching firm. I still do it. I just have a smaller client base now. Um, and because I was having so many like conversations with cool business owners, like I have a best-selling children's author on my street here. I have a guy who owns barber shop chains. I knew a couple other big-time business people in Kansas City. I was like, and you guys probably, maybe that's part of why you have this show. I don't know, but like, you ever walk away and go, "I wish I could have recorded that conversation."
Mm-hmm. Always.
That's what my show is all about, man. I'll just
Yeah.
show you guys, KCBC. This is my show.
Yes, I love that.
And
Go watch
so,
it. Follow him.
Yeah, for sure.
Please do.
But it came from the idea that um there are so many memes and New York Times bestsellers flooding LinkedIn. And like, I love the Simon Sinek's and the Grant Cardones and these really smart, influential people. The fact of the matter is, I'm never going to get to do life with them. And, one of my takeaways from the pandemic when I saw what happened to small businesses during that, like, do you remember like all the stuff with like, essential workers, essential businesses, all this stuff.
Yep.
And like, there's a huge amount of the percentage of small businesses that shut down and never came back. And for me personally, man, like I love supporting people in my community and I love supporting local businesses. Like if I can avoid going to the big box store to get something and get it from somebody who lives in my hood and is supporting and their kids go to school with mine, like I want to do that. And so a lot of people that are on my show, it's Kansas City business owners, nonprofits, and creatives basically. um I want to shine the light on these folks. Some of them have never been on a podcast before, and then there's people like Cam F. Awesome who has a freaking Netflix documentary made after him, right? Like he does a podcast like every day almost, or he did when he came on mine. And I met him through another business owner that I had on the show. You know what I mean? And so it's become this like movement now to where people know what my show's about, and a lot of the folks that follow it are people who have either been on the show or people who buy from the businesses that are on the show. And
Mhm.
I just keep it really punk rock, man, because I got really tired too of like the podcast, the leadership and business podcasts where they got these people that are just they talk in this language like you can't even understand. And for me, I just always liked hearing people's stories. And so a lot of people from the fitness community out here have supported it. Actually, that's what kind of has gotten me back into fitness, because a guy that I had on my show, I interviewed him before he started it. His name's Sid. He's a bodybuilder. He's
Mhm.
a tower of a dude. He's got me on a meal plan. I go out to his gym. But he was on my show, and like, his wife runs a hot yoga studio that my wife has gone to. And so we're all kind of supporting each other now, and people
Yep.
know like we've got kind of a reputation. And I've featured some nonprofits as well, which I love. I love shining a light on the nonprofits because man, they're solving the world's hardest problems, you know.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
No, that's
But I
great. You're
bring all
bringing
my
it
band
together like that,
creativity,
like the scene. Yeah.
like this over here, this is all from my show. Like I have like the lightning bolt and like the picture of Shawnee, Kansas, and my logo and the Kaizen, the kanji characters, because I can't help but have this like metal, like underground feel to it. And that's almost like what it is when I'm having these folks on the show. It's like some of them have never been on a podcast before. And they
Yeah.
tell me they're like super scared. And people have canceled, and some people have said, I just can't do it right now. I don't feel like, I have anything that I can share. But
Yeah.
it's really helped people, like when they get on the show and then they see how we promote it afterwards and stuff, they go, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I did that. Like that was a growth accelerator for me. So, but yeah, it's Kansas City Business Cast,
That's
Spotify,
incredible.
YouTube, and Apple.
That's sick.
Incredible. It's great to do. Great, get that scene mentality together with all the businesses. It's really right. Help each
Absolutely,
other out,
dude.
move everybody. Everybody, there's room for everybody to succeed.
Yep.
You don't have to hold people back.
That's a
That's
great
awesome.
point, Derek. That's a
Well,
great point. Don't
what
be
do you think?
don't be a dick to other people. Help people
Yeah,
out.
exactly. Just don't be a
Frickin'
dick.
A. There's so many
Yeah.
people have that mentality of like, oh, if I help them, it's gonna hurt me. Nah, there's enough for everyone to eat.
Oh, dude, like that old Zig Ziglar quote where he's like, "Help everyone get what they want, and you'll have everything you want." And I last thing I'll say about the podcast, because I know I'm running this long here, but like it's introduced me to other podcasters in Kansas City, and like we've got a couple in here. Like I'm going to go on a couple of other shows coming up soon. I know 3 years from now, these folks are going to have huge podcasts. And, that is what I would say to anybody at any city. And like, I love your comment too, Andy, about like how there's enough for everyone to eat.
Mhm.
Like we're starting to talk about that. Like we might do KCB Con. Like I might do like a convention
Sick.
of the business owners that we've had. We've already had a couple business owners like talk about like volunteering their space for that, but it would be a spot where people could come and they could learn about local businesses. And like, if they're a business owner, they could, figure out tips and tactics and tricks. But like, I think too, like you guys, you've already found your people too. Like you're bringing people on this show, but like as you lean in and people start to notice that, more people are going to come along. And the other thing that I will say too is like, don't for anyone out there, even like in a band, like don't monitor your followers and your likes and all that stuff. Like that will drive you nuts. Like that'll drive you nuts, and nothing will kill your spirit more than if you compare yourself to like someone else and what they're doing. So many people just don't engage, but they see you and they know you and they trust you because of your consistency, and your name will come up in circles in rooms that you're not invited to. Like it'll come up, and then next thing you know, it's like, but anyway, all that to say, like right now it's just faith of a mustard seed with this shit, man. Like I'm just doing it, being consistent.
If
hopefully good things will come.
you're talking about comparison, and if I'm going too long, just tell me to shut the hell up, and I will. We'll just end this. I need to ask you this one last thing. You compare. I remember being on tour, being with other bands, and kind of like looking at what other bands are doing. Like there was a number of bands that we took on tour that end up blowing up way bigger than us, like so fast, like super fast. Did you ever get caught up in any of that? Like kind of like looking to the left and to the right, and like kind of like, and you guys would just talk shit, like just like, oh.
It robbed us of so many good times, dude. Yeah, absolutely.
Can you would you mind naming any band that comes to mind that you felt like kind of like maybe jealous of? Or maybe pissed at, like just because like if there's also
rivalry?
like a rivalry.
Maybe a rivalry. Man.
Also being on Face Down, Jason Dunn is like the father. And he has favorites. I love you, Jason, but it's true, Jason. You have your favorites, and and I get it, because like, dude, if a band's making more money, you're gonna keep. I get it. I guess now I get it, but like as like the kid that was like didn't get as much attention as the other kid, you kind of did. You ever have that thought as well, or maybe you were you had a lot of attention from Daddy. I know that. Yeah. You don't even know. You don't know what it's like to be the redheaded stepchild. You have no idea. On Face Down.
So yeah, absolutely, dude. Like that's part of why, like, I've talked about youth is wasted on the young. I feel like we don't know how good we have it, when we're at that stage. And so when we're insecure, we start looking at what other people have and we don't, right? And that is where I think, on Face Down, absolutely. It's a rivalry. Because the Christian metal scene is this big. And there's bands that have certain pieces of that pie, and when you go in and you're trying to like make a difference and try to be the heavier band, the more extreme band, the more Jesus-y band, like then all of a sudden you start having these dumb little pissing contests. Like Cornerstone was the worst, dude.
Oh yes,
Cornerstone. It's funny, I said that was one of my favorites, but man, that is where the most.
It's a pissing contest.
Arrogance, like, dude, I'll never forget, dude. It's funny. I got this funny story from Cornerstone. We were we were in somehow we found our way like into Living Sacrifice's trailer. Okay. And I asked Bruce Fitzhugh, I say, this is my line to Bruce Fitzhugh, who is like one of my heroes, and Living Sacrifice is just this amazing band, right? That I was actually the first Christian metal band that I got into. And I was like, hey, you guys toured with Cannibal Corpse, right? And he was like, and I said, he goes, yeah. I said, what was that like? He was like, dude, it was only 2 days. It wasn't a big deal at all. And it was like that popped my balloon, man. Like I felt like my feelings were all hurt.
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm saying this on a live podcast right now. But like for like a couple months, I was like, man, Bruce is a dick. You know what I mean? Like I didn't even know him, dude. And it's funny because like after I left, I think his merch company actually, Sinai Beach, printed some merch and stuff. But like, yeah, we'd have that, like the band that would go on after us, like they'd be standing there like giving us looks, and then we would pass that on, and we'd give bands the look. And like, I just honestly, dude, like, if any of those bands are listening around, forgive me if I ever gave you a dirty look, or if I was a jerk to you, because it was all insecurity. It's all insecurity, you know?
But it also, you also have that mentality of when you're playing shows with other bands. Maybe you have looked up to them when you were younger, but then you have this, like, there is a level of arrogance. You're like, oh, well, he's my peer now, or she's my peer. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
actually went out. I had a similar experience when we were playing at some festival with like POD and Brian Head Welch. And I
Oh,
loved Corn, dude.
wow.
And I went up to Brian
Yeah.
because we were like eating dinner together. I went up to him. I was like, "Hey, man, I really appreciate you." Blah blah. He looked at me. I don't know exactly what he said, but it was like the attitude of like, "Do you belong here? Like, are you in one of the bands?" I was like, "Oh, I'll go fuck
Who,
myself."
hey,
Okay.
whose son is this?
Yeah. Like, I really like you. I play music, and he's just like,
Dude,
"Who the fuck are you?"
that fatigue is real too when you start getting approached by kids who are goofy and awkward. And I tried to keep myself in check with that stuff too, because I know, for the way I talked about Bruce responding to me, I know that I did that to people as well, right? Like, I know that, like, I was sweaty after a show, I just wanted to go home, my neck hurt. Or, my
Hmm.
wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, she was like, man, we are not going to be able to get to that appointment tomorrow or whatever. And I was short with somebody, and man, it sucks. It sucks, dude, because that, I've had my heart broken, and I've probably broken a couple of hearts in that respect too.
Yeah, it's tough. It's
We're
a tough, because
humans.
even if you're not being a dick and you're just like, oh, cool, like, kind of like brush off, that person's probably waiting the whole either weeks for you to come, or even just
Yeah.
the whole show to like approach you or something, and you're just
Oh,
like, oh, cool, all
Dude,
right, I gotta go.
absolutely.
and it took so much of their confidence to like just muster up this. I'm gonna say hi to this guy, and then we're just like,
Dude. Dude, and that's
"Who are
that other
you?"
thing too. Like, if you get that type of success, like anybody out there, man, like, that is a heavy crown to carry, and a lot of people can't handle it. And that's
Yeah.
why that kind of stuff happens. And I say that knowing that, like, I'm not in a band anymore. I'm basically Al Bundy right now, talking about the 4 touchdown passes that I threw in high school in many regards, right? Like, I'm just an old hat, and I'm an old head talking on a podcast. But at the same time, man, like, I really do, like, if I could do it all over again, that is one thing that I would, for sure, I would have in check no matter what. I would give everyone at that show my undivided attention.
Yeah.
I would not, like, my hurt neck, or the fact that I haven't slept or whatever, like, I would be aware now. I know I would, because, man, I've changed a lot in my life. Like, there's certain things, like, I've learned it with my kids, man. I'm like, geez, man, this is like their entire world. They want my attention right now.
Hmm.
I need to give it to them. The other thing too is, like, I would just apply, like, more business principles. I'd be more of a hard ass with, like, promoters and, people who wanted us to do events and show up to things. Cause that's the thing, is, like, you often, you feel like you're obligated to do these things. Like,
Yeah.
go to this signing, or do this thing, or go to this gala. We want you to show up. We want you to appear, at this place, and do this thing. And, you know, I don't know, man. You can't be everything to everybody at all times.
Yep.
You can't.
For
You
sure.
cannot.
That's just, you learn that through doing it, right? Like,
Yep.
you learn a lot of that by getting it taken advantage of, even if it's on a small scale. It's like, oh, okay. Like, and now, like, I wouldn't do that to someone else because I've had it done to me. And you can keep other people in check as well in the same regard, and be like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And it's always important to do, especially with the younger bands. Like, I always try to, be like, kind of give these things, like these pieces of advice of like, don't be like the loser I was sometimes, at shows. Like,
Mm.
and it seems like a lot of the bands, especially the younger bands we've talked to over the last year or so, are very in tune with that. Like, we had
Oh,
we had a
dude.
singer of a band, in mid interview, like, pop up because someone came to their show in New York and like give him a hug, and
The
like,
Asher?
and we were, yeah, Asher
Yeah,
from Nail Shut
he's
in
awesome.
Austin,
Awesome.
like, super young but just super smart and understands how it works, and like how to grow, and that one kid next time they come to Brooklyn is going to bring 10, and that's just
Absolutely.
how it goes. So
Yeah, it's exciting, man. I mean, sometimes what's happening like in the music scenes now, it makes me want to go back to it, right? Like when you're talking about that, like out here in Kansas City, like we just Coalesce has been playing shows again. And I was supposed to go when they were playing with Chat Pile like a couple months ago. I was really sick, ended up selling my ticket, but I'm going to go see them in like 2 weeks. And they've got these local bands playing. There's Conflicts and then Spine, and they're both from Kansas City. And these guys are just, I watched Conflicts play with Orbit Culture. Orbit Culture came through, which they're one of my favorite newer bands now. They're not, I guess, new anymore, but like Conflicts, man, like when you get to talk to these guys, they're present. They're at the merch table. Like they're having fun up there. You can tell. It's like if they're taking themselves too seriously, I can't see it. And I've talked to Nigel, their vocalist, and there's just this gratitude about them, dude. And so maybe in some regards too, I have to also think like whoever we are when we were in the bands, that's a product of our upbringing, where we were raised, who we were around with. And I also can't assume that like every 18-year-old kid that signs a record label is also going to be a dick just like I was, right?
Right, exactly.
Because there's some who just they're going to be able to do it, right? They're going to be able to handle it and do well and all that. So
well, hopefully we're helping someone to learn these things through this platform. But
yeah, that's our greatest goal. We want to help these artists, man.
Yeah.
These these dudes that are like just and ladies too, all the above.
Oh, dude. Some of the girl vocalists, dude, like that are coming up.
Spirit Box, dude.
That new Poppy album is.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, Courtney from Spirit Box.
Courtney.
I remember back in the day, it was like Angela Gossow from Arch Enemy. She was like the only one, and even then, she had this one tone that she would do. And now they're just absolutely crushing it.
Nightwish, Leslie. Yes.
Yeah, dude. My daughters are huge fans of Nightwish, man.
Sick.
And we're hoping that they got one more U.S. tour in them, man, because Flor Jansen too. She did her vocal tutorial videos. They went through those with my wife because my wife sings. So my girls too. That's the other thing too, is like we're passing on the metal, man. They love listening to Spirit Box, like, and they're so 4 and 7. Like my 7-year-old was probably not the best thing the other day, but she's doing that VAN song by Poppy and Bad Omens. She's like, she wasn't saying violence against nature, but she's saying violence against nature. She's just saying it over and over again. I'm like, man, I got to have her listen to a different song. Can't be walking into school being 4 years old just saying that over and over again. But
yeah, a little kindergarten edge
stuff. Yeah. Kindercore, bro. It's legit.
It goes hard. It goes hard.
All right. That's the other gift, man. But anyway, I've absolutely loved talking to you guys, man. You guys are awesome dudes.
Michael, I have so many more questions for you that I think we have to do this again soon, like, or something, because I'm loving this conversation. I think you're fucking amazing. I appreciate you, and you already mean so much to me and the show. Thank you so much, man. Thank you
so much for coming on. It was amazing.
And what can you just give us your Instagram handle again so people could follow?
So it's at KCBC913, and then I've started my podcast network. My wife is going to be the first artist on it. It'll be about mental health. It's KCBC TV. That's on YouTube as well, at KCBC TV. That's where you can find all the podcast episodes.
Amazing.
And then, we're on Spotify and Apple, and LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram are the socials. But so good meeting you guys. Derek, you got a beautiful beard too, by the way. I got to tell you, man.
It's so hot.
I know that's a lot of work, man. I tried ironing mine for a while and blow drying it. I couldn't hang, man. But it was so good meeting you as well, man. And Andy, I'll be talking to you soon, man. And,
we'll chat.
Hit you up in Teams.
Definitely. Michael Reisinger, everybody. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Take care.
Love you guys.
Peace. Love you, man. Later.